Welcome to the Creating Conditions podcast, brought to you by the American Indian Student Achievement Team at the Montana Office of Public Instruction, where we strive to create the conditions necessary for American Indian students and all students to reach their educational and lifelong goals. Creating Conditions emphasizes the proactive effort of shaping an environment to facilitate a desired outcome. It involves recognizing that success often depends on more than just effort. It also depends on the surrounding circumstances. Our team believes all Montanans stand to benefit from the Indigenous knowledge that persists today. We are dedicated to serving all students through the creation and implementation of Indigenous whole child supports. No matter where you work or what populations of students you serve, we are so glad you are checking out our podcast because all students attend school as whole people and whole learners.
Shodaja, Bazilabajay Galawishook, Biabsalagak, Itchig Tiawagam. Greetings, my name is Watches the Buffalo Go By, and I'm a member of the Absalaga Nation or Crow Tribe. My American name is Crystal Hickman, and it's good that you're here.
And I'm Michelle Henson. I also serve as an American Indian Student Achievement Specialist at the Office of Public Instruction. And thank you for joining us today. We're excited to kick off episode 2. And so in this episode, we're going to explore the Indigenous Whole Learner Relational Framework, or just the Relational Framework, which we've come to call it a little shorter version of that full name. And this framework is our response to the data that we presented in the first episode. And so if you haven't had a chance to check that first episode out, we welcome you to do that. But in that first episode, we discussed some of the data trends that we see with both academic achievement and graduation rates and dropout rates, and the similarities that we see across the populations of students that we serve. And so check that episode out if you haven't had a chance already. And again, this is sort of where we're landing as a unit on how we're addressing the quote unquote achievement gap and how we're working to support American Indian students from across the state. First, a little bit about whole child education. Whole child education recognizes the relationship and influences of a student's social, emotional, cognitive, and academic skills and how those skills all play into each other, the bidirectional relationships, the multidirectional relationships. And whole child educational concepts are rooted in Indigenous knowledge systems and worldview and have been practiced by Indigenous tribes for millennia in educating children. That's something being really dedicated to whole child work and whole child approaches. I think that's an important point to make, is that for many tribes, they've been doing this all along, and we're catching up sort of in mainstream America. So we'll jump in, and Crystal, are you ready to share a little bit about the framework? And this has sort of been your passion project, but I know you've been working on it with lots of other people. And so do you want to just start by telling us why you decided to create the relational framework?
Yes, and it is my baby in one sense, that I kind of pulled it all together. But in another sense, it really is a collective effort over years and years of providing service through the Tribal Student Achievement and Relations Unit. It's the collective vision and approach that we have developed over time in response, as you said, to the data, the understanding that there is a gap between the achievement of non-Indian people to our Indian students, our American Indian students. So in essence, there's a lot that goes into that perspective. There's so much that we believe and are passionate about in the work that we're doing around seeing our students as whole people who are living their life today. But sometimes it's really hard to explain what that means, and trying to put a whole bunch of words together when you're just trying to explain to somebody this is why we're doing it this way can be a little difficult. And so I sat down one day and I looked at notes and I looked at some of our presentations that we'd done over years since 2011. 2011 really, but 2015 is when I joined. And I took that information and I was trying to figure out how to present it in a way visually that people could see our heart, really just see the heart. And of course, the first thing that popped into my head is the medicine wheel, because the medicine wheel, some cultures call it the sacred hoop, is about the whole being. It's about interconnectedness of all living things. And it's a guide itself. It's a guide to help us connect those major domains of our life, however they're defined. Most often they're defined as spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. And having them in quadrants in this medicine wheel helps us understand that there needs to be balance in all of those things. Like one can't mean more than the other. And so the visual became kind of the starting point for me. And of course, there's lots of other stuff that I kind of have compiled after that, not just my work, but yours and Matt's and many of people who are no longer working in our unit. But it's all in there. And I don't feel bad about that, because it's the medicine wheel, right? And all things are in the medicine wheel. And so in that sense, this is all, we own all of it. So essentially, the answer to your question is so that we could communicate our heart to the people that we're serving.
And one thing, Crystal, I think you've done really well is taking something like a whole child approach and applying that to a framework that's two-dimensional. It's so hard. A two-dimensional world is so hard and so limiting. And I really like the way that you've, created a framework that you can really see the full dimensionality of our students and taking that whole child approach. And I'm wondering, in that same kind of train of thought, can you describe some of the major components of the framework?
Yeah, absolutely. Or I'm going to try, because it's always fun to do a visual audio through audio or in words. But for those of you not familiar with what a medicine wheel might look like, it's a circular framework, and it's divided generally into 4 quadrants. And these quadrants represent the holistic perspectives of being human. It is rooted in Indigenous cultures, not just Americans, but all over the world. The medicine wheel itself is particular to the Plains tribes here in Montana and the surrounding states. So one quadrant is called knowing. And in that quadrant, we have several aspects. Opposite of that is being, which is above belonging and next to doing. And that's going kind of clockwise around. So each of those quadrants are related to what most people understand is heart, mind, body, and soul, and seeing the whole human. So, but one of the reasons that I decided to make this about, to make these verbs is because, one, most of our indigenous languages really are rooted in action, in verbs, and in the doing of life. But also, two, we work with kids. The work we're doing with kids they're kinetic. They're always going. And so they're in the moment. They're right here, the present participle. It's happening as we speak. And I really wanted to communicate that. So knowing is related to intellectual development. Being is about spirit and our relation to something larger than ourselves. Belonging is really about our connections to one another. And doing is the things that we do, the activities, the emotions, the interests and purpose that we have. In the center of the framework, there is a blue circle that radiates outward. And that is really centers the student that we're talking about, our students, our kids, our babies, really. But overall, arching over the whole framework, I've added a circle that is supposed to look like a spiral. And so it's spiraling through that child, that individual child, and all of those quadrants, but also those spirals represent that child, him, herself, the family, the community, and the nation. And so these are all aspects of relationality that we have. We have a relationship to ourselves, and we have a connection to each of those quadrants for ourselves, but we also have that connection in each of those quadrants to our family, to our communities, and to our national identity. And so not only are there 4 things to maintain balance that we need to look at, but we also need to understand the relationality of all of these things. There's so much balance. And so in the end, I hope it's more of a sphere than it is just a circle framework. Does that help?
Yes, that's great. And that was sort of, like I said, trying to create a very multidimensional framework, but in the confines of a 2-dimensional piece of paper or online
Right.
online document. But it's beautiful. And I think maybe there's 2 things that I'd like you to expand on, if you don't mind. And so the first is you had mentioned spirit, soul, but I've also heard you refer to that as spark. And I'm wondering if you would just allude to that a little bit more, because I think that's a really important part of this, or just a way to conceptualize spirit or soul in a way that is applicable to all people.
Yeah. That I don't know when I started using Spark really, but I recently, not too recently, but in the recent months, I was at a training, and I got the question as I'm presenting this relational framework: how do we represent spirit or being to our students at school in the educational setting? And I loved the question. I was so excited that I got it, because it helped me remember to remind those listening that being or spirit is not related to religion. I mean, obviously there's a relation to religion, but it is not religion. It's about the thing that animates us. It's what excites us. It's what moves us in the world. It's how we exist in the world. It's our being. It's very much who we are. And so it's a spark. And I loved the reaction I got from the woman who asked the question, because she identified as an atheist. And I loved that moved her. The idea of a spark, the animation of our being, is as important as any other aspect, no matter what you believe.
I've heard one of our Salish elders that we've worked with, she talks about it as it's the thing that makes you go. And I can't say it quite the way she says it, but I love that idea. It's the thing that keeps you going. It's the thing that just is your essence, and it's the thing that makes you go and makes you move through the world. Thanks, Crystal, for expanding on that. I think the other part too, and I think maybe that same Salish elder, I've heard her talk about when you're educating a child, you're educating an entire family, you're educating an entire community. And I guess, would you expand on that, or anything else you would add to sort of that idea, and why adding those spirals was an important piece of this framework? Because I think that is something that's unique to this framework, something I've not seen in other whole child's frameworks or concepts. And does anything else you would add to that piece as to why that was an important part?
I think back to my years as a wraparound coach working for the Tribal Wraparound Project at OPI. And when I had new facilitators who were going to be working in the schools, I helped them kind of understand this by saying, when you talk to that child, you're talking to their family. Children don't end at their skins. They're not developed. They're not mature. They can't move through the world on their own. They can't exist on their own. And so when you talk to that student, you're talking to his aunt, to her mom, to their siblings, to their neighbors. I mean, I always think about how my kids run home and say, hey, this is what I learned today. Or did you know this, Mom? And they want to share that knowledge. They want to share that experience. And so our kids, when our students are in front of us, it's so important that we understand that they are not alone. They're not a discrete being in this environment, that they are connected in very deep, meaningful ways to the people that they are around outside of the environment that we see them in.
I know you touched on this a bit, but anything else you would like to talk about as far as the process that you went through? Because I feel like the end product is important and beautiful, but the process you went through was also very important and beautiful.
I think so too. And I could get emotional just thinking about it. I'm coming up at 10 years with OPI, but a lot of this work preceded me, and it will go on beyond me. But the actual process I went through, like I said, I sat down and really spent some time. Luckily, I had the luxury of doing that, and I was able to sit down and just really think about what it is that we're doing and how we're doing it. And so I was able to come up with the idea of how to communicate it. But the real process is so many people who came together around surrounding our children, wrapping around our children, helping our children to do the best that they can in the environments that they're in, finding purpose, trying hard. Those concepts were all part of this. And so, yes, I did sit down and I put this little framework together. And I'm not a graphic artist. There are whole days when I'm just like, oh, I should have tried harder. But so I certainly I did that. But after that moment, I also realized it wasn't mine, and I couldn't say, hey, this is what it is now. We're gonna put this out in the world. And also, I have a responsibility to my community and to my people, the Absalica people, and the people who are spiritual guides for me, community guides, community leaders. And so I actually sent this out to one of my spiritual mentors. And I said, hey, I'm using this medicine wheel, and this is how I'm using it, and this is why. Would you look at this and tell me if there's anything that is not okay? And interestingly, the mentor that I sent it to other people who were in our community, and they commented on it, and it gave me enough, I guess, certainty that I was able to take it out to some of our Indigenous knowledge keepers that we work with at the OPI. And I learned some new things, and we added some stuff as we went along, but it wasn't, in the end, it was an idea that came from experience that was then put back into the world to verify those experiences. And so I might have been kind of the fulcrum, but it's not my work, and it won't end up being my work. It belongs to us all.
And how do you envision schools using this framework? I know we've presented on it a couple times, and but for those of you who may be listening and this is the first time you've heard about this framework, what would you tell schools or school personnel, Crystal, about the utility of a framework such as this?
So I was actually, in preparation of this question, I was trying to figure out, how do people use frameworks? So, how do they do that? So I looked up a few things, and in the end, I want this. It's a guide. It's literally a frame to look through. And the importance of this particular framework is that when we are doing the work of educating our students, we need to make sure we're not just focused on knowing and doing. That our knowledge, our information, the things that are being learned in our classrooms and in our educational environments, they have to be received by the being, and they have to be received in the community. They have to be meaningful in the world. And so hopefully this framework is a way of checking the work that we're doing against our hearts and against our sparks. And so those important moments when our students are not responding the way that we hope that they would, or that they actually need to be responding in order to learn best. I hope that this framework will act as a guide, so that we're not just focusing on the knowing and the doing. And if a student is increasingly depressed, that we kind of consider all of those domains and all of the aspects within the domains and say, could it be this? Could it be this? How can I approach this? Because in any given situation, there are many, many ways to approach a whole human being living in the world today. They are multidimensional. You might be facing them in the front, but they have a back and they have a side and they have an up and they have a down. So you need to be reminded to see all of them and not just the front that's facing you.
Anything else you want to add? Anything maybe I didn't ask the question you needed me to ask? Anything else you want to add about it?
No, I think I have a question for you, actually. Just following up on that, I know recently in conversations you've shared with me that you've been using the relational framework in your own life, and I'm like really curious if you'd share a little bit about that.
Yes, yeah, I have. And so what I have found myself doing in my own personal life, and then also if folks come to me and maybe are asking for some advice from me about some challenge that they're experiencing, is I have pulled that framework up and then specifically looked at some of the domains and aspects. And typically I think about, okay, where am I at? Where am I falling, or where am I feeling sort of some weakness, or where am I feeling maybe some struggles? Often it's in relationships. Sometimes, I'm a mom. Sometimes I feel like I have, not done a very good job being that mom. And so I look at like identity, roles, those connections, and that's where I can feel where some work needs to be done, or where I feel maybe some challenges happening. And so then I look at that aspect and I think, okay, this is that belonging, this is that heart piece. What can I do to strengthen that sense of belonging? Maybe I'm not doing as good as I wish I could in this, this certain aspect of my life. How can I either work towards that or work towards some other area of connections? And so it's been useful. It's been a useful way to just sort of frame, okay, what is it exactly that I'm experiencing? What is it exactly that I'm having a challenge with? And then that also becomes a framework for identifying a solution for kind of regaining balance, regaining that sense of belonging, or whatever it is. The other area I've fallen into a lot lately too is looking at doing. And as I am, feeling really tired or just feeling kind of sluggish, whatever it is, I look at the body aspect or the doing aspect, and then I'm like, okay, let me go outside. Let me connect to nature, or let me watch something funny and experience some humor and, strengthen that body aspect or that doing aspect. And so it's been a really useful tool for my own life, and I've been using it a lot. And I think that also shows, as a non-native person, I think that this framework is so applicable to any person, any student. And so whether you serve Native students or not, I would encourage you to check it out. Just, sit with it for a little bit, try it out a couple times, and just see where you land. And also even, try it on your own self too, the way I did. If you're feeling a certain way, pull it up, look at it. Where are you at? What aspect are you sort of struggling with? And where are there avenues for strengthening that domain, or just kind of rebuilding that sense of wellness and balance? So I think we're close to wrapping this episode up, and thanks for sharing, Crystal, about the framework. And I think, for folks who are listening, if this idea of whole child is new to you, there's lots of different resources out there. We also have at the OPI our whole child skill development and some other areas where we focus on more holistic approaches to serving children. I do have to say, I think that this framework, this relational framework, is truly a holistic framework. And I just encourage folks, if you're interested in it, reach out to us. We'd love to share about it. If you have questions or if you want some training, anything you want is something that we're really focused on helping schools, not only adopt a holistic framework, but also adopt those strategies that can support students holistically. And we're here. We're here to help with that, whether you serve Native students, non-Native students. We'd love to work with you on those whole child approaches.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for letting me talk a little bit about this passion of mine for seeing our students as whole people living their lives, not just preparing to live their lives in school, but actually living their lives in school. So,
Thanks, Crystal. And we are gearing up for episode 3. And so our next episode, we'll hope you'll check it out. We will be talking about welcoming routines broadly, and then specifically about our Indigenous morning greetings project. And so this will be an opportunity for me to we'll flip roles, and Crystal will be able to ask me some questions about a project that I've been helping steward here at the OPI. But thank you for listening, and we hope you all have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Creating Conditions podcast from the American Indian Student Achievement Team at OPI. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, share, and leave a review. And keep joining us as we work to create the conditions every student needs to thrive.